Hello, this is Dr. Sander with Music Theory Simplified. Today we're going to look at one of the most powerful applications of chromatic harmony. Even more powerful than the use of fully diminished seventh chords. Today I want to talk about what we call in music the chromatic mediant. But before we talk about the chromatic mediant, I want to tell you a story. And this story comes from the opera by Bela Bartok called Bluebeard's Castle. And the reason I want to tell you this story is I think it will help to underscore how powerful this chromatic mediant can be. The story begins with a man named Bluebeard, who is legendary throughout this region. And he lives in a secluded castle far upon the hill, and no one wants to go to that castle, except for one person named Judith. Judith grew up in the countryside, but had an insatiable curiosity about this castle. And even though she knows all of the rumors, she knows the dangers, she's heard the stories about Bluebeard, and yet she's still very curious about what goes on in that castle. As she grows up, she's obsessed with this castle and with Bluebeard. And despite all of the warnings, she decides she wants to go to the castle, even though she knows her doom may await her. So she gets up to the castle door and enters the castle door where Bluebeard lives. And as she enters the castle, she sees that it's been untouched by time. And it's an enormous place. Even over a week, you couldn't explore all the rooms in this castle. And eventually she meets Bluebeard. And she's curious about not just the castle, but about what's going on in Bluebeard's head. What secrets does he hide? Over the time she spends with Bluebeard, she explores the entire castle, except for 7 rooms. And these are secret rooms, and Bluebeard has told her you are not to open the doors to these rooms. Now, Judith was a very curious woman, obviously. Some say it was out of pity. Others say it was just extreme curiosity. But she began to demand to know what was behind these doors. And it became somewhat of a sick mantra with her, constantly asking, "Show me what's behind these doors, Bluebeard. Show me, show me." And Bluebeard just says, "Don't ask questions, just love me." Perhaps she thought she could fix him, or maybe she was simply curious. But over the weeks and the months, she gradually wore him down. He finally allowed her to see the first door. And as he unlocks it and opens it up, she looks with horror. In it, she finds a torture chamber, covered with dried blood. And you would think, well, that would be enough to dissuade me from wanting to open more doors, but this is Judith, and she was extremely curious, and this only fueled her curiosity. So she asked him, "Let me see what's behind the second door." And as the second door opens, she sees that it's an armory full of swords and axes and shields, again covered with blood. Now, she was terrified, but she still was curious, and I think her curiosity was greater than her terror. So she asked him, "Let me see what was behind the third door." And he said, "No, please don't ask me any more. I cannot reveal these things to you. Just love me." But to no avail. She wore him down, and she opened the third door, and in it was full of jewels and gold and treasure. Now, this obviously was a little better than the first 2 doors, and it made her even more curious to see what was behind the other doors. So he agreed to open the 4th door, and behind the 4th door was a fragrant garden full of the most beautiful flowers she had ever seen. She figured these are getting better. We've gone from torture to flowers, so let's keep going. And he absolutely refused. "No, you cannot see any more doors." But she wore him down. She convinces him to open the 5th door. And behind this door, as it's opened, you see this great vista, landscape, full of mountains and sky, and on the ground, blood. This was Bluebeard's empire. Now you'd think she'd stop at that point, but no. She kept going. Remember, there were 7 doors, and she had opened 5. So over time, she convinced him to open the 6th door. And he begs her, please don't open this door. This door is very special. You cannot open this door. But she wears him down over time again. And as she opens this 6th door, she sees a sea of tears. And at this point, we see that Judith becomes completely enslaved by her curiosity. Because as we know, there's one final door remaining, the 7th door. And she demands that it be opened. Not even asking, but demanding that Bluebeard open this 7th door. And by this time, Bluebeard's worn down. His past, his secrets have all been revealed except for this final 7th door. And he capitulates to her. And he just lets her open the door. And he collapses on the ground and watches her. And as she opens this door, she sees darkness. So to get a better glimpse of what might be behind this door, she walks through the door. And at this point, she sees Bluebeard's 3 former wives, each representing a time of his life: morning, noon, evening. And it's then that Judith realizes she represents the night, the last wife of Bluebeard. And she remains trapped behind the door as Bluebeard ends his life in solitude. Now, I wanted to take time to tell you that story, the synopsis of this opera, because there's a special moment in this opera which uses a chromatic mediant. If you recall, the 5th door is when Judith opened up and she sees this vast landscape which represents Bluebeard's empire. And as she opens this door, the music that we hear sounds like this. What an incredible moment, made possible by chromatic mediants. Let's take a look at what's actually happening. When we say chords share a mediant relationship, it simply means that their roots are related by third. This G major triad has a mediant relationship with the E minor triad below it and the B minor triad above it. But these relationships are diatonic because there are no chromatic elements. Therefore, we can call them Roman numerals 6 and 3, respectively. But it's also possible for triads to have a mediant relationship with one another, but also contain a chromatic element. Here we have the G major triad related to E major below it and B major above it. So while they're related by a common tone, they also have a half-step chromatic element that separates them. Here we have that same G major triad with a different mediant relationship to an E-flat major chord below or a B-flat major chord above. Again, with chromatic mediants, there's always one common tone and one half-step chromatic element. Minor triads can also have mediant relationships. Here we have a G minor triad with a diatonic mediant relationship to the 6 below and the 3 above. Note that in diatonic mediant relationships, there are always 2 common tones between triads. However, if we change one of those common tones to a chromatic element, we can create chromatic mediant relationships, like this G minor going down to E minor, and this G minor going up to B minor. And this G minor triad going down to E flat minor, or going up to B flat minor. One of the keys to recognizing chromatic mediants is to spot the common tone and the chromatic alteration. But you can also spot them by recognizing two triads a third apart that share the same quality are chromatic mediants. Note that all of these triads share a mediant relationship and are all major chords. Likewise, these are all minor triads that share a mediant relationship. In contrast, diatonic mediant relationships always have differing qualities. No, I haven't forgotten about the Bartók example yet. I just wanted to make sure that you understood what a chromatic mediant is and what makes it so powerful. It's like we're leaving one tonal world and entering into a whole nother tonal world. And that's what makes opening this fifth door such an amazing experience, an amazing musical moment. It's like Judith is entering into Bluebeard's empire. So let's take a look at the score and see actually what's happening. Here's a piano reduction of that magnificent musical moment. Note the chromatic mediants at the beginning, C major to E major, and then later A major to C major. Remember that these types of chromatic mediants always share the same triadic quality. Let's listen to it one more time. There are so many movie scores that use chromatic mediants, and I think it's this departure from diatonic harmony into a different chromatic world that helps film composers convey the sense of the supernatural or a sense of fantasy. But we do also find these in classical pieces as well, specifically those that are in the late 19th century when fantasy and the supernatural were common themes in music. I hope this gives you a little bit of a better perspective on how chromatic mediants are written and analyzed and how they're used. But we're out of time in this lesson. For now, this is Dr. Sander reminding you always, always, always keep it simple. Take care.